Okay, so the topic this week actually kind of wrote itself, to be perfectly honest. I had a few ideas floating around in my head that I was going to do, but it seems like I've gained a new fan, well, I wouldn't call him a fan, but I would call him a new subscriber, even I don't think he's subscribed. But I've been getting quite a load of comments, and I haven't approved them all because some of them are attacking other people on this channel. But there's been a new twist or a new spin on some of the old accusations I've heard in the past. I've said it before on videos in here. I've had people tell me, you probably never went to any AA meetings. You probably never had a sponsor. You never worked the steps. The same old useless crap that I've always heard in here, that AA didn't work for me because I wasn't willing to do the work. But the one that I usually get on a pretty regular, consistent basis is that I was never an alcoholic to begin with. Well, this is a new spin to an old argument. The comments is that I'm not really an alcoholic. I never was really an alcoholic. That I'm just mentally ill, and that the people on this channel who follow this channel and who subscribe, comment, and all the others, they're not alcoholics either. They're all just mentally ill. And the really funny spin on this is that all the people like me and the people who subscribe on here and comment, we're actually the problem in AA today. We're the ones that are responsible for all the terrible things going on in AA today because we're non-alcoholic people in a room that's designed for alcoholic people. So in other words, we're killing people. I've gotten that accusation before in my time on here. You're talking trash about AA is killing alcoholics. Alcoholics will think that they can reclaim their will, that they don't have to have a higher power, that they don't have to, the usual cliched lines that I've probably outlined on here numerous times before. But this is kind of a new one. We're not alcoholic, we're mentally ill, and the fact that mentally ill people like myself are in AA meetings is dragging AA down, because real alcoholics are not getting the help they need. Now, I do like what somebody said online in one of the forums about this, because he was saying, well, you can't be an alcoholic if there is no such thing to begin with. And I've made the claim on here several times that there is no such thing as an alcoholic. It's a claim that I feel confident in making because I've never stumbled across anything scientific or anything outside of the AA Big Book and its circular reasoning to demonstrate to me that there's something called alcoholism, and alcoholism defined by AA as a spiritual malady that only a spiritual experience can cure. I am unaware of any psychiatric institutions or any other kind of illness that they're claiming alcoholism is that's cured by prayer and meditation and talking to a sponsor. But I'm going to play along. I'm going to play along for this video. I'm not even going to bring up the no true Scotsman fallacy, and I think I've explained it on here before. When you hear where a Scotsman in a hypothetical scenario says, no Scotsman does this, but someone mentions a Scottish person who does that, it's in regards to porridge. And he said, well, he's not a true Scotsman. That's a rough paraphrase of what the fallacy means. You understand what I'm driving at there. Like if I said I'm a big fan of grunge music from back in the 1990s when I was a teenager, I'm a huge fan of that, and someone tells me, well, I like some of that stuff. I didn't really care for Alice in Chains, and I really didn't like the Stone Temple Pilots much at all. And I would say, well, you're not a true fan of grunge. In other words, it's a silly little type of fallacy that I think it should be very, very obvious. But I'm going to ignore that fallacy for this video. I'm going to pretend that fallacy doesn't exist. I'm going to pretend there's such a thing as an alcoholic. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can put to bed once and for all this accusation, this nonsense that I've had to endure so many times. You were never an alcoholic to begin with. Okay. One thing that I guess a lot of AA true believers are going to really despise about me is I know my freaking literature. I was in AA for over a decade. Okay, I sat through all those meetings. I read the big book pretty regularly and on a consistent basis. Even stayed in the first 164 pages, and I had many sponsors from hell on earth. Some of them have passed on. And in fact, I kind of wonder, unless one of my old sponsors is down in hell sending messages on these YouTube comments, I almost wonder if it wasn't him sending the message, because the reiteration, I used to hear him say it about people behind their back all the time. He would say, well, that person is not an alcoholic, they're just mentally ill. That person is not even an alcoholic, they're just mentally ill. One particular time, I remember I was riding in the same car with him, and he had the radio station on, the rock roll radio station, the same radio station I would kind of listen to, plays my old, the kind of music I usually tune into on the radio. And there was a song that came on by Journey. I don't remember which Journey song it was. He said, the strange thing about Journey? The lead singer wasn't an alcoholic. He was just mentally ill. I was like, what does this have to do with a fucking song? I mean, what does everybody who's a rock and roll singer have to be an alcoholic now? I mean, what the fuck is that? But anyway, let's say we're going to go by the big book alone, the first 164 pages, which you AA true believers out there will say, all you need is in the first 164 pages. Most of the old-timer gurus that I had to answer to as a sponsee, most of the chair people I knew that had been around the deal for double-digit numbers of years, as they like to constantly announce to the entire room every chance they got, would all say the same thing, the first 164 pages. In fact, I remember one particular sponsor I had that got upset when I had that book called AA Comes of Age. Well, it's not the program. That's not the program. The program is in the first 164 pages. Go stay in the first 164 pages. So, for the purposes of this video, we're going to stay in the first 164 pages. Now, according to the first 164 pages, as a matter of fact, I think it's in either the chapter 4 Alcoholics Anonymous, or it's either in the More About Alcoholism chapter. It says, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. Okay, probably alcoholic. Yeah, the big book even actually says at one point, we don't want to call anybody an alcoholic, but if you think you're an alcoholic, I think that is in chapter 3, More About Alcoholism. It says to go to a beer joint or a bar and start drinking. Do it on more than one occasion, it actually says. It says it's well worth the jitters for you to find out the truth about it. And I'm going to say this. Alcohol did a lot of destructive things in my life. Okay, most of the bad things that have ever happened to me in my life, the really terrible things like the loss of my freedom in jail, getting the permanent black marks on my record, for DUI, being in emergency rooms, and many other things that I could continue on with, all happened as a result of drinking. Pretty much most of the most humiliating things that happened to me in my adult point of life was directly or indirectly related to drinking. I mean, I'm counting all the bullshit that I went through in AA meetings as an extension of the drinking problems, because I'd have never been in those places if I hadn't had a problem with drinking. So yeah, many, many times in my life I did exactly what it talks about in chapter 3. Drinking beer only, not drinking in the morning, doing this, doing that, all these other methods that it says we've tried by every form of self-deceit to prove that we are not alcoholic. It even claims that we're in full flight from reality, that, can't no longer tell the true from the false, and all that other bullshit. Well, I did all of those methods, you see. I had little or no control over the amount I drank. When I drank, I could also rip off another thing out of the big book. I had brief periods of control followed by inevitable worse periods of relapse, which led to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. They used to read that in these terms in the meeting like they were performing in a fucking Shakespeare play, or like they were trying to win an Academy Award for that kind of bullshit. But I did all those things. I had little control over the amount of alcohol I drank. When I drank, I used to say things like, well, I'll stop after this certain amount. And then when I got to a certain amount, I'd say, you know what? Can't stop. Already drunk. Might as well have a good time. And there's many times that I slammed the bottle on the counter and said, I don't know why the fuck I keep doing this to myself. Now, the really tricky part here is if the AA Big Book says they can't diagnose you as an alcoholic, only you can do that. And as it says in another chapter, the only way that you can even get any help from the program is to concede to your innermost self that you are alcoholic. Then when you accuse people of not being alcoholic, you're not following the fucking program. You're not following the first 164 pages, which is what you claim is the answers to all the fucking universe out there, right? In fact, one of the comments from this particular new guy was talking about the kid. I'm flattered that you called me a kid, though, in one way. I'm 45 years old, soon to be 46 in November. But if you feel that I am a kid, I'll take the compliment. It was like, it's like every time I get carded for cigarettes, even though I'm primarily a vapor now and trying to get completely off the cancer sticks altogether, I'm always kind of flattered when somebody gives me a suspicious look and says, "May I see your ID?" So the kid's not an alcoholic, he's just mentally ill. Now, I don't know where you got your fucking mental health professional degree from. I'm pretty much guessing you don't have one. I'm pretty much guessing you're going by the 164 pages of the Big Book. But here, on this whole entire chapter 3 thing, it says that we alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. Well, I did that. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. Well, I never recovered control over my drinking during all my time in AA, or even before AA when I got into AA. So I guess I'm a real alcoholic, right? All of us felt at times we were regaining control, but much intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by less control. We are convinced that alcoholics of our type are in the grips of progressive illness, blah, 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 blah. Over here in chapter 2, it says there's a certain segment of the population that are hard drinkers. Now, this is where I find it kind of funny, because I think one thing that AA is good at doing is it engages in semantics. It splits hairs over terms. Okay, have you ever looked at that appendix in the back of the book about spiritual experiences and variety of spiritual experiences? They literally trip over words like obsession and compulsion and obsession. And all. It's really, really infantile when you really think about it altogether. But in that very chapter 2, it says, by every form of self-defeat. Well, I don't know about self-defeat, but I know that I didn't like admitting to myself that I had a severe problem with alcohol and I couldn't control it. I didn't like the fact that, when my drinking started to get bad, I couldn't recapture the, as Bruce Springsteen calls it, the glory days. So what criteria are you outlining, you who claim I'm not an alcoholic, I'm just a mental nutcase? What criteria are you going by in the first 164 pages of the Big Book to describe me? Unless you're going to claim I was a hard drinker, which this is what I think is funny. They say a hard drinker can drink himself to death, but he's not an alcoholic. A hard drinker can lose his job, lose everything he has, lose his family, but he's not an alcoholic. He's a hard drinker. Of course, the whole synopsis of the dumb fucking program says that what creates an alcoholic is the phenomenon of craving, which does not exist in the ordinary temperate drinker. I'm sure the sponsors that I've had in the past, a couple of them dead now, down there in hell, can say, well, my voice is still stuck in his head now while they're burning down there. Hopefully, I don't believe in hell. But if there is a hell, they belong there. Trust me on that one. But a so-called phenomenon of craving, which doesn't exist in the average ordinary drinker, is a lot of flowery language that doesn't really point to too much. There are plenty of people out there. If you've ever gone to a bar, you've ever gone out with friends, you've ever gone anywhere when you said, hey, I'll have a couple of drinks and then I'll stop after this, and you ended up staggering home plastered, and you said, well, I've done this before, I should be all right. You woke up in the morning with a bad fucking hangover, and maybe or maybe not you had hair of the dog that bit you to stop the hangover. Is that a phenomenon of craving? Is it a phenomenon of craving when you have one too many? Or is that, there's a hard drinker who drinks himself to death, who's trying to get a drink down his throat towards his deathbed, who's not really an alcoholic? Does he not have a phenomenon of craving? But phenomenon is a stupid way to put the fact that when you do something that makes you feel good, you want to do a little bit more. In fact, since they love to split hairs over words and they love to split hairs over everything else, I'm going to actually ask the good old friend of mine phone here what a phenomenon definition is, right? Okay. Let's take a look at what a phenomenon is. A factor or situation that's observed to exist or happen whose cause or explanation is in question, a remarkable event. So in other words, a phenomenon is kind of a phenomenon, or whatever you want to call it, is kind of an unusual event. So when I start drinking and I start wanting more alcohol, and I drink myself into a drunken stupor, that's not really that unusual. Millions of people the world over do that every single day. It's not some mysterious thing that only affects a tiny portion of the population, that when they drink and they catch a good decent buzz and they want to keep the buzz going, they end up getting intoxicated. True, I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here. There are people I met in AA that I don't think ever had a fucking drinking problem. Those were usually the ones that like to hear themselves talk in the meetings a lot. I don't ever think they had a problem with alcohol. I mean, I really do think for whatever bizarre reason, they were just high off hearing themselves talk. I mean, I knew a guy that said he got sober when he was 17 years old. He said, I used to steal quarters in a high school cafeteria and get on the payphone and get people to bring me liquor to school. I mean, that's pretty fucking pathetic. I mean, if I didn't ever have a drinking problem, the last place I would ever want to go is a freaking AA meeting. I mean, I join a freaking science fiction book club in a month somewhere before I would do something like that. I have encountered people like that. I've encountered people that were just off the, just kind of off the wall. I don't know what their issue was, but I do think it's funny that when your own literature tells you that you're only an alcoholic when you can say you're an alcoholic, now accuses me of not being an alcoholic. And by the way, no, I don't believe there is any such thing as an alcoholic, because there is no disease on earth that requires prayer and meditation and talking to sponsors, as I've already said at the beginning of this video. But I just find it funny that these people who level that accusation that everybody who leaves AA and doesn't drink themselves to death will say, you were never an alcoholic to begin with. The very thing that happens in every newcomer meeting I've ever gone to is nobody here is going to call you an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic when you know that you're an alcoholic. But then if you quit drinking and you stop going to meetings, they'll either say you're never were an alcoholic to begin with, or they'll say you're going to drink yourself to death and die sometime in the future. I saw a comic meme one time where they're all at a man's funeral, and this old guy says, I told him back in 1967, if he left AA, he would surely die. And here we are in 2017. It took all these years, but it finally killed him. I mean, when you can't really clearly define a term, when you're leveling accusations of something that doesn't even really exist, it's kind of like if you tell, like I've had people that are Catholic tell me I never was a real Catholic to begin with. I mean, I could split hairs and tell them exactly all about my childhood down into the minutest of details, and they would just immediately switch the goalpost and they would change the definition into something else. What they're really saying when they're saying you're not an alcoholic to begin with, in my opinion, in a translation, in other words, what they're really saying is you don't fit the bill, you don't fit in the one-size-fit-all category that I want. You're an anomaly because you were able to leave the cult religion and find criticism with it. And so therefore, in order for me to create my own cognitive bias here, what I'm going to have to do with my cognitive dissonance is make up some kind of excuse as to why you can't have ever been a real alcoholic to begin with. Anyway, I hope I went all over the place with that, but I get so tired of hearing that you never were an alcoholic. No, because an alcoholic doesn't exist. There are people who have drinking problems which go to various degrees, and there are people who do not have drinking problems which go to, which have their own issues that they may deal with in another manner. The difference between me when I was addicted to booze and someone who's not addicted to booze is I use booze as a coping mechanism, which became an ultimate coping mechanism to get through everyday ordinary life. That's all that means. It doesn't mean I have a fucking spiritual malady here. Anyway, I said that I was going to close every video in the future with a subscriber comment each time, and I think this one's really fitting because old-timers are such judgmental people when it comes to when it comes to anybody and everyone around them. But even though they claim they're spiritual and humble and all of this, but this is what a subscriber said. It said the other night, well, actually, they were saying the other night before I had a chance to respond. But anyway, they said, here's a true story. Back about 6 or 7 years ago when I was trying AA again, one of the members told a story about someone who used to attend meetings but couldn't stay sober. One night after the meeting, he said the guy left and promptly walked in front of a train and committed suicide. Now, I didn't know this person, but I can believe this is a true story. But here's the kicker. The old-timer then announced this was nothing but pride. He couldn't humble himself, and he said it with a tone of pure contempt. Yeah, I'm certain this person I never met was so fucking proud of himself walking towards his death. The bastard was probably thinking, my life sucks, I'm going to be fucked up forever, I have no hope, and I know I can't get this program, so I guess I'm doomed, and I might as well end it now and save the pain, or words to that effect. Pride my ass! Couldn't say that any better than what they just said. I've been suicidal several times, so have I. I survived an attempt, by the way. And by the way, one of these days when I'm kind of ready to open up and talk about it, I can tell you what happened to me with my suicide attempt, my stint in the insane asylum, and how old-timer people thought it was fucking funny when I got back to AA. It's a story I'm just not comfortable talking about just yet, but one day maybe. It's an utter feeling of hopelessness that life can never get any better no matter what you do, and you just want to give up. I've been there. There's no fucking pride in it. I totally 100% agree. In fact, the opposite. And they go on to say that they're glad they didn't do that or not, but I've seen that very same thing happen. To go off that subscriber comment, the arrogance of these people to exclude people, the arrogance of the people that want to claim you don't even have a drinking problem, why are you here, you're not an alcoholic, hoping that your life will get worse, hoping that you'll fall apart so you'll crawl back into an AA meeting and say, you know, you guys were right. I need to surrender. I need to humble myself. I need to kiss the ass of your AA God and suck off on a sponsor or something like that. That's literally what they thrive off of. They thrive off pain and judgment. Pain, judgment, and their own arrogant, sanctimonious bullshit. Anyway, 21 minutes, 31 seconds. Since all of my subscribers are not real alcoholics, we're all just mentally ill, chime in on the comments and let me know. You never had a drinking problem, did you? I never had a drinking problem either. I'm just crazy. The lengths these people will go to make excuses for their fucking cult religion is just amazing to me. Until next time.